Well, we've been doing the gospel according to Andy Williams. No, Andy Griffith. Andy Williams. He was a singer. Moon River. Anyway, anyway. No, yeah, the golden oldies. We all know them. Yeah, they're kind of coming back around. Um, Before again, Charlie Kirk's memorial is this week, and there's going to be about 200,000 people there. Continue to pray for him and his family. All right, now today this is about charity, and there's a couple of things that about this whole issue that I want to address. Just two, not three. I don't have 3 points, but in this episode 8. Oh yeah, I forgot my hat. I got bald. All at once, man. I was shedding like a Shetland dog or something. I have white hairs all over me. I was really shedding bad. And I tried to shave off my beard, but I'm not doing so well. And Linda's gone because she's taking care of Shay, and she couldn't tell me where I missed. So forget it. I just am as I am before you guys this morning. So anyway, now there's a charity drive in Mayberry for the underprivileged children. And Andy's talking to the teacher about this charity drive. And he learns that Opie was only given 3 cents to the charity drive. And he can't believe this, that his son would be so miserly. And this bothers him a great deal, in part because it embarrasses him. He is the sheriff of Mayberry. And so this is when Andy finds out that Opie is only given 3 cents to the charity. We'll see the first episode. Oh, wait a minute. Let's read scripture first. Pam put it up there. I better read it first. Okay. Jesus answered them, "Is it not written in your law? I have said, you are gods. If you called them gods to whom the word of God came and scripture cannot be set aside, what about the one whom the Father set apart as his very own and sent into the world? Why then do you accuse me of blasphemy because I said I am God's son?" That's an excellent text. You are gods. Wow. I barely have an ability to say without, feeling some guilt about it. I'm a human being, And I usually follow that with some diminutive like, and nobody's perfect. So what, would I ever consider myself a god? No. I don't know how you feel about that. You are gods. Wow. Anyway, let's go to the next scripture, which is from Psalms. Okay. It's Psalms 82, 1 through 3. A psalm of 8. God presided. Is there any Kleenex out there by any chance? Huh? I'm so sorry. Thanks. Oh, okay. Thanks, Randy. Boy, I had a Kleenex coming at me from both directions. Linda feels that way when she says, hand me the Kleenex, would you? And I throw the box at her, across the room. Okay. God presides in the great assembly. He renders judgment among the gods. How long will you defend the unjust and show partiality to the wicked? Now, who are the gods? This is a long research topic. He's done a tremendous amount of research. The supernatural realm, and right now I can't think of his name. But anyway, how long will you defend the unjust and show partiality to the wicked? Defend the weak and the fatherless, uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. And here, because rescue the weak and the needy, deliver them from the hand of the wicked. The gods know nothing. They understand nothing. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I said, you are gods. You're all sons of the Most High. But you'll die like mere mortals. You will fall like every other ruler. Rise up, O God, judge the earth, for all the nations are your inheritance. You are gods, you're sons of the Most High. That's just the psalm that Jesus is thinking about when he's in that debate about whether or not we're gods. We are. The gods, in the first part of 82, the assembly of gods. How many gods are there? And it's led to a lot of inquiry into the nature of the supernatural world. You can read the books. I'll put a list in this week or something. Anyway, let's look at this episode. This is Andy trying to come to terms with Opie's miserliness as he sees it. I love Opie's concreteness and literalness in this. But Andy's really upset with him because when you have a fund drive, you should give, and it's a worthy cause and you have the means, you should give according to your means, according to Andy. And certainly not save it to splurge on your girlfriend. And so it looks like Opie's just got his thinking on backwards, and that he's not doing what Andy wants him to do. That is quite clear. He tries to explain it to Opie, and of course Opie can't grasp all of that. Too many children go to bed hungry. There's no question about it. Too many spouses are abused. The Earth's temperature is rising, and sea levels with it. The mass shootings. Charlie Kirk assassinated. 3 students at Evergreen shot the very same day. Within a few days, 5 police officers in Pennsylvania, 3 of them are killed in trying to serve a warrant. And every day it seems like our news is filled with these sorts of things. But how long will these things stay in the headlines? We Christians need to read and wrestle with the numbers, as Andy is doing. 1.5 boys per square mile who's impoverished. Those numbers may or may not communicate to us any more than they communicated to Opie. We could tally up all the numbers of mass shootings since January, and that number would cause us to turn off our TV sets and stop listening if we're in the middle, of a discussion or something. Why? Because we feel helpless. We feel guilty. We don't know what we can do about it. We're standing there with our 3 cents and saying, how far can this go? You just can't take care of everything. And is money really the answer to any of these sorts of things? We can throw our money, and sometimes it feels like we don't know what to give to or who to give to, and sometimes we give and feel like we've just thrown away our money because it wasn't undeserving. We learn after the fact. And those sorts of experiences have led us all to just become very, very uptight about this whole issue of giving. And it's not that we don't want to give. We're a giving people here. I mean, how many times have we filled that box for the Family Resource Center? And every time we say, let's give to the special fund to help people, man, it fills up. And we got to be, I am so grateful. I am so grateful for the amount of love and giving that this congregation does. I have been the beneficiary. It's been hard to be on the, to realize that I had to go through that time of receiving. But going through that time of receiving, I learned what a gift cancer was for me. Cancer has been a tremendous gift. Has it been painful and difficult? Well, that goes without saying. But at the same time, I learned, first of all, I learned what Michael Jr. talks about when he says we have to have a season of receiving as Christians as well as a season of giving. And I have done nothing but receive generous gifts, cards, calls, love, affection, food, meals, rides to Denver, just all kinds of things over and over and over again from this church. And you are such a gracious and giving people. Do you wonder sometimes, though, about your gifts, whether you should give to this or give to that? Wonder if it, first of all, if it's a legitimate cause. We've all been burned there. Wondering, second of all, if it really would do any good, the small gift that we have to make or whatever. Wondering, third of all, where God really wants us to give. Well, Andy found out something. We can look at the numbers, but that doesn't tell the whole story. And that's what Andy was doing. He was looking at the numbers. And looking at numbers is important, as I said, you know. It may prompt us, for instance, to give to the policemen, to the police departments, to protect our own policemen around here. You know, they go respond to domestic disturbance calls all the time. And those are the most dangerous calls of all. When I was working as a chaplain with the police department back in Lincoln, we would go, we had a car and a radio and everything, a police car and radio and everything. But we could not go into a place where there was a domestic disturbance until the police had cleared the place. And there was one incident with one of our chaplains who went in. The police had supposedly cleared the place, but hiding in a alcove or recess of some sort that they didn't find was the abuser, and he came out and beat the chaplain pretty bad. And that's not funny. I'm just amazed at how they missed that, but also my friend just really took a pretty bad beating. So, yeah, it's a very dangerous call, and we might be motivated. We hear about something like the 5 officers who were shot, 3 who were killed in Pennsylvania, and we go, man, I got to give to that cause, to support the policeman's family or something. I mean, there's all kinds of appeals to our heart. What should we give? When should we give? And is it all about the numbers? Well, no, not really. Let's see this next episode of Andy. Suddenly there is a human face to need. It's right there in front of him. And Opie saw the need in the person that was right there in front of him. Now, Martin Buber wrote a book back about the turn of the last century called I, Thou. In this book, I is you and I. That's the personal ego. Thou is the divine ego, the divine nature. And his argument was that we as human beings need to see others as thou, the sons and children of God, with the divine nature in them instead of yous. Now, I'm not talking about a female sheep here. What I meant by yous is you is the language that we use sometimes is altogether appropriate, and other times becomes accusatory and demeaning. You always do this. You always put, the garbage in the garbage can wrong. Or you always pick on my failures or my shortcomings or something. It's very accusatory. When we point the finger at someone else, we're saying you, when sometimes what we mean inside is it. We're thinking of them as an it. And that's even one step lower. Because an it is an animal, it's vegetable and mineral, not an animal, really. By the way, some people treat their pets better than they treat their own children. Martha Stewart Living, for instance, don't want to pick on her. I kind of liked Martha Stewart's show. But then her daughter Alexa writes a memoir, and she loves her mother. They are on pretty good terms. But she said, Mom was so busy at the studios all every day, putting together her video show, her TV show, and working on her magazine, that we never had any food around the house. It was hard to find anything. She would cook all these things at the studio kitchen, come home, and then she wouldn't fix a meal, and we had to scrimp for ourselves. And I'm thinking about that because now I see these commercials with Martha Stewart and her cats, and you see her with her dogs and her horses down in her Bedford farm, and she feeds her dogs, her horses, her cats, and her chickens better than she ever fed her children. So I don't know what that is, if Alexa is right, her daughter is right about that. But yeah, sometimes the person right in front of us is the one that we see the least in their God-givenness. And it's not because we really don't love them per se. I mean, in domestic arguments, in arguments between husbands and wives, between parents and children, is like this argument between Andy and Opie. It wasn't that he didn't love Opie, but he was thinking about Andy and his own standing in the community and what it would say about him as sheriff and as a parent if it got out in the community that he let his son only gave 3 cents to the Privileged Children's Fund, and he didn't. And then he started looking at the numbers, and the numbers say we got to give to this fund, and then he kept going on and on until Opie was able to finally get his attention and to let his father know that what he saw was a person in need. That's where real charity begins, when we can see the need in a person that we consider to be God's child and someone to whom we can help or reach out with some kind of assistance. How do you know? How do you know? How do you know who you should give to? Fred Craddock tells a story of giving some used clothing away to a Goodwill, and then to a family that not to the Goodwill, but to a family that they knew needed the used clothing. And then his wife went by the house to take some food to him one day, and there was the dog lying on one of the dresses that she had given to him. And they said, well, thank you for the food, and that was it, and then so she turned away, and she went back home, and grumbling all the way. I gave them all those clothes, and they're using them for a dog bed, and they didn't, I brought by all that food, and I don't even know if they need it, and all that kind of stuff. He talks about that kind of, what it does to us. We resent how people that we thought were in need received the gift. But he also has some powerful stories of what it's like to be poor in Tennessee, what it's like to line up in a line for children who can't pay for their lunches at school. Everybody knows what that line is. And every day you have to line up in that line and have everybody in the other line that's paying for the school lunches look at you as though you're just poor white trash. And he said there was many a day that they would go without eating. They didn't want to face having to line up in the line for children who needed to have their school lunches paid for. There are some hungers, there's some needs, there are some things that are more important than going hungry or skipping a meal. And that is our pride and our ego. Now, how do you and I feel if our gifts that we have given have been mistreated so badly, or were not real needs? And how do we know what is a real need? And I don't have an overall answer to that, but I'm experimenting. Remember, we had Michael Jr. a few weeks ago, and Michael Jr., who's a black comedian, an excellent black comedian, one of the top preachers in the country, in my view. Anyway, he said, that you have to listen to God. Are you supposed to give or supposed to receive? He walked by a homeless man who needed a bottle of water because God said, don't give that man a bottle of water. He didn't know. Maybe there's a woman behind, he had two, and maybe there's a woman behind him that had a bottle of water that needed to give. And if he gave, then he would deprive her of the opportunity that God had in mind for her. Now, I don't know. That's a little strict reasoning, but I am playing with it because I think I think it has a lot to commend it in some other ways. And one of the ways that I think it has to commend it is that we should ask God. The only way we're going to get wisdom and clarity about this issue of who is important to give to when we give gifts is if we ask God. Should you give to your church? Should you give to our Help Someone Fund? Should you give here? Should you give there? Ask God. You know? I hope God tells you, yeah, give your entire fortune to the church. But no. No, I don't know. I don't know what you should give. God can guide you. Okay, is this how it works? Does God tell us in the moment? And I'm not sure about that, but I think so. I believe so. And I've had some experiences across life that have kind of underscored this. When I needed wisdom, it was like God almost spoke to me in the immediate moment that I needed that wisdom. Well, when you need wisdom, I think God will speak. Somehow he will let you know if a gift is to be given. And one of the things I thought about doing, I haven't done it yet, is to take a $20 bill, put it in my glove compartment in fives, 4 fives, and when I drive through that Walmart parking lot and I see that person for the 15th, upteenth time standing there saying, I need gas, pray about that. I can't understand why they always need gas every weekend at Walmart. How do they get without gas when they get to Walmart? That person, that's a real situation. I've seen that same guy more than once there. Should I give him money for gas or not give him money for gas? We know the lady that sits in a wheelchair that acts like that she needs help. And I was there one day when she got done and packed up all her stuff and put it inside a limousine. So, I don't know. Or Cadillac, I think it was. But it was a pretty fancy car. And I'm going, that could have been just a ride for the day. So do I have the wisdom to judge that? Should I dismiss that she has no need, or should I pray about it? And then if God nudges me at any particular point, I got some money in my glove compartment, I can respond, and there are other ways. And I think that it's most important that we let God guide and give us wisdom in terms of our giving. Because we got to see the other person as someone who is made in the image of God, and that God knows their need, and what God wants us to do is to respond to those who God knows needs our particular gift. It's the best way. We have to deal with a lot of our guilt. We have to deal with a lot of our guilt. And that's hard to do. I was in the New York Port Authority bus terminal years ago, and I was with some friends from New York, and we were down there in New York City and getting ready to go to Times Square and Manhattan Garden, all those places. And this young girl comes out of the bathroom, the women's bathroom, and she's noticeable because first of all, she's very unkempt, long stringy hair, and she looks like that she has been really without a bath for a long time. And she goes up to a mural there in the Port Authority and puts her face against the wall and starts looking at inch by inch that little mural. And as she's walking around and approaching people, you can tell very quickly that she's mentally disturbed. And then she turns and starts to leave the Port Authority bus terminal, and there are two guys that noticed her, and this whole scenario plays out right in front of my eyes, and I can see it very clearly. They take off after her, and I don't think it's to help her. And I'm real concerned about her, so I start to go when one of my friends pulled me back and said, no. And I said, but did you see the girl? Yep. Did you see the guys? Yep. She needs help. Yep. You aren't going to give it. Why? A, this is New York City. B, where is she now? And I turned around. I couldn't find her anywhere in the crowd. I said, well, if you hadn't stopped me. And I said, no, there are policemen. It's daytime. There's policemen out there. There's no way. What if they have knives? What if they didn't look like they were carrying guns? What if they have knives or something? What if you get in between them and the girl? What if? And I listened to all the arguments and realized I didn't know New York City at all, And I was a visitor there, and I had no business trying to tell them what the climate and culture of their city was. And I thought, well, okay, I'm glad in some ways that they stopped me. I don't know what I was going to do if I caught up with her anyway. And I was ill prepared to give in that moment. And so the only thing I could do was pray. And I prayed and prayed that she would receive whatever help she needed whenever she needed it, and no harm would come to her. And I don't know the outcome of that story. But it was a moment where I thought I was supposed to give and I couldn't give. And I just prayed that that person would receive whatever help they needed. I think that's the next thing that God calls us to do. And it's all part of, did I look at that girl and think, wow, this is somebody I want to have home for dinner, meet the family and all that kind of stuff. No. I mean, it was clear that she needed a lot more help than I can give her, that she belonged in some kind of treatment program that can help her, and far more than anything I could do to help her. I was just going to get in the middle and all that. But to see in her the humanity that God created in us, which is very close to divinity. You are sons of God. You are gods, Jesus said. You are gods. And to see that in the other person is precisely the thing that God calls us to do. And in our world, we dehumanize persons. We dehumanize them far too much. That is, it makes it easier to deal with them and control them. I learned in the hospital, though I had great hospital care across the years, and I knew the system walking into it. And I've seen the system of hospitals where they have to control everything to make sure that it remains a controlled, sanitary, healing environment. For instance, I couldn't get out the 9 days I was in intensive care. I was a fall risk. And I couldn't get out of bed, or if I got up and I sat in a chair, I couldn't get out of the chair without setting off an alarm. And that alarm would ring and everybody on the floor would come running because it meant normally that I had fallen. And I was a fall risk. But in the process of trying to help me so that I didn't fall, I stayed in bed or a chair for 9 days. And I wanted to walk. And the fact is that they're just very short of PT persons in all our hospitals. By the way, the hospitals really are looking for OT, PT. Emily. Anyway, they're very short of help. In fact, I can't get into PT at Anschutz until after the 30th of September. And I didn't want to get into PT and Anschutz anyway. I wanted to get in here, but I can't get in here. Everybody's short of help these days in the healthcare fields. And so, in order to manage that, in order to manage their needs, they have to manage me. And when you're in a hospital situation like that, people begin to feel dehumanized sometimes. I never let it get to me. I understood what they needed to do, that they had to manage their shortages by managing me, and I would let myself be managed as much, or as little as I wanted to be managed, but at the same time tried to understand what their needs were. And I didn't like it for 9 days. And finally one of the nurses came in late at night, and I was one of her 4 patients, and I said, do you have any time to let me get a walk? I really need to walk. I haven't walked in days. And she took me for a long walk, and we had an excellent talk. And there are ways of humanizing the situation. I have found that when I first walked into cancer treatment, radiation treatment at the radiation center, and I've shared this story with several people, I guess, not to brag about myself, but because it's just the way I am. I don't like it when people stay strangers that don't communicate with each other. The end result of that is dehumanization. And when I walked into that cancer center, that radiation treatment, everybody was staring into their phones, the ones in my section that came early in the morning. and they were all staring into their phones, and nobody knew each other's names, and nobody would talk to each other. And I'm not sure. There was a person sitting behind the desk who was our who was the secretary or the receptionist or the financial person there, something. Anyway, she was sitting there all the time, and I think they would look at her occasionally, and I thought, well, is there some rule that we can't talk to each other and talk to each other about our cancers? I mean, is that some HIPAA violation or something? So this went on for a couple of weeks, and I'm finally going, I can't take this. I don't want to go on for 6 more weeks. I had 8 weeks, and I don't want to go on 6 more weeks not knowing who all these people are. So I got up and I said, hi, my name's Lou. I have sarcoma cancer in the bone here and in the bone up here. I'm here for radiation treatment. I've had 6 months of chemo. Hi, what's your name? And then I invited them to talk, and we started talking to each other. I mean, that opened doors I didn't know had been artificially closed, because the people that were sitting there were so excited to share and to talk, and we formed a real community. My last day when I rang the bell, there were tears, and we were all hugging each other and saying goodbye, knowing that we probably wouldn't see each other again. A small little community, a moment in time, but people are so hungry for that. Everybody wanted to talk about their cancer and their kids and everything else, and I got to know their kids and their spouses. And there, one guy even, he was Ivas from Lithuania, and his wife was Nadia. And they were from Lithuania, and his daughter and he were conversing over the phone. And he said, hold on, just a minute. He brought the phone over to me. Hi, this is my daughter. Say hi to her. I said hi to her. I tried to speak to her for a little bit. She had to go, and she had no idea who I was. But he was so proud to share his daughter with us. And I got to know about their life in Lithuania. 25 years ago, he won a green card in a lottery and came to the United States. And he's made his life and his fortune here ever since. And he is a citizen, and we just have wonderful conversations. There were so many like that. I could tell a number of stories, and I just want to tell you, I think that's what we as Christians are about. You know, the best gift we have to give is that gift of love and caring that doesn't get intimidated by the restrictions and the barriers, but reaches out again and again and again to people who are lonely and isolated, because there's enough in our world that makes us lonely and isolated and brings us to that place where our contacts are all but lost, I never forgotten the scene in Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather series, and I think it was probably the last Godfather movie, when Michael Corleone is ordered the execution of his brother Freddie. And his hitman has taken Freddie out on the lake, and first thing is you see the dark, gloomy, rainy shrubs all around the house and around the lake. Then you hear a gunshot, and then the next scene you see Michael Corleone standing in his parents' house. And it was all about family. Everything that he ever did was for family. He was supposed to take care of his brothers and his parents and his grandchildren, his nieces and nephews and all of that sort of thing, and his own wife and his own children. And they live in a family complex. And in that family complex, the family would pull in, and they would close the circle, and that is circle the wagons, as we say out here, and they would close the circle tight whenever the family was threatened. It was all about family. And in the very end, what we see is Michael Corleone standing there all alone. His siblings are gone, his wife is gone, his children are gone, his parents are gone. They're all gone. Out of the compound. His wife and children, divorced, living someplace else. And he's all alone. Michael Corleone did everything for family, and he's all alone. You can see that. And what is so depressing, and what I call the dust colors, that is gold and bronze and dark shadows outlining the gold and the bronze as he looks out over the lake and to what is a gloomy and rainy setting. Here he is, Michael Corleone, who did everything for family and lost it all. That's, we need to see the humanity in others. Freddie became a liability, and then he had to be disposed of, and that's how Michael dealt with everything and controlled everything. No, no, no. God is the only one that can teach us how to give. Been better for Michael if he'd asked God.